Hey folks, this is Akshay from Photographic and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I made a video. Been busy at work for the most part. But today something interesting happened. I woke up in the morning to a notification that there's a new firmware update for the Leica Q2. I checked the release notes and it has highlight weighted metering and intelligent dynamic range. Two features that had been rolled out to the the M11 a few months ago. And I remember searching for a firmware update for Q2 and I didn't find it. But we have it now, and so I immediately installed it. By the way, installation was a breeze because it's now updated over the air through the Leica Photos app. So it was absolutely easy to install the update, and I have it working. So let's take a look at it. Hey folks, just want to take you through the menu options for the highlight priority mode. So if you take a look at the screen over here, by the way, I'm shooting in director's mode on the S21 Ultra, and I might need to get closer to the screen so you might see through my nostrils. But pay attention to the bigger screen and not my picture, and then we should be fine. Alright, so I have set the favorites menu so that the top right button opens up exposure metering for me. So you see here is multi-field metering, and we can move it to highlight prioritized. And you see what happens to the window. You're suddenly able to see what's beyond the window. Whereas if you were in multi-field metering, the window would go completely bright and the highlights would get clipped. So that's our new mode. There's also center weighted and spot, which we are not going to use. Spot, of course, is for metering for a very small portion of the image, and multi-field is usually what we would use because it takes into consideration the entire image. But in this instance, I'm going to leave it at highlight weighted, and that is the new metering. Now I've also used the function button here to set up the iDR mode, and the iDR mode has 5 settings. It has auto, where it chooses the iDR option automatically, but you could manually set it to high, standard, low, or off. And we're going to take a look at the images that we get by manually setting these different iDR modes with highlight weighted metering as the default option. Alright, so let's get to it. We have a few images that I took with the highlight priority mode on and the iDR at different settings. So this first one is with iDR at high. There's also an auto mode that chooses the iDR option according to some algorithm, but I manually chose the values for iDR. iDR, by the way, is the intelligent dynamic range mode. And so we have the RAWs and the JPEGs for 4 settings in iDR. The first one is high, the second one is standard, the third one is low, and the fourth one is off. And so those are the images that we see here. So this one is a raw file, and if you look at all the raw files, they are exactly the same. So basically iDR is only making a change to, sorry about that, so iDR is only making a change to the JPEG that comes out of the camera. If you look at the raw files, the exposure is all exactly the same. Yeah. Now the focus point was this bottle that I had. So if you check, you can see some highlights on the bottle and it's perfectly in focus. So the camera was able to see the rest of the image quite clearly, but it underexposed to prioritize maintaining the highlights. So what we're going to do is, well, let's first look at the JPEGs. So if you look at the JPEGs, the story is a bit different. We have, this is the JPEG where iDR is off, so there's no dynamic range that the camera is adding to the photograph. This one is at low, standard, and high, and so you can see from the bottle as well as from the shine on the side of this cupboard that it's basically allowing for extra light, or it's bringing up the shadows a little bit in the JPEG when you set the iDR mode appropriately. So that's auto iDR, and it's choosing the highest setting. So high and auto are exactly the same exposure, and then that's standard, that's low, and that's off. And that works quite well in the JPEG world. But we're going to look at the RAW, and we're going to see how well are we able to recover the details and the shadows, because this is clearly not a usable picture. Right, you have the highlights properly exposed. There's no clipping if you check, but there's definitely some shadow clipping, and things have gone black. So we will try to recover this as much as we can. Now we do have a highlights adjustment in RAW as well, in Lightroom as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is try bringing up the exposure by, let's say, 1 stop, and then recover the highlights. And you see that the highlights are completely recoverable. So I'm going to leave it just there. And then I'm also going to recover the shadows. And I don't want to go too far with this because it will start getting grainy, especially darker areas without focus tend to get a little grainy. So you can see that in the corner over here, if you push this too far, you will see a lot of grain, and that's not what we really are looking for. But right about there should be enough, because it is a dark corner. If you look at the bottle now, it's perfectly exposed along with all the dirt and grime on it. And then the inside, the shelves in the cupboard were too dark anyways, so that's perfectly fine. And this is quite a usable image now. So all we have done is bumped up the exposure, recovered the highlights again, and pulled out the shadows. And this in itself is quite a decent exposure. Now I might do some other adjustments to make it look more creative, but that's what you get. One of the advantages of highlight priority is that if you keep your ISO on auto, then the camera is immediately going to choose a lower ISO, and that's the way that it chooses to underexpose rather than choosing lower shutter speed, for example. So I was shooting in aperture priority mode here, so I was at f4, and it chose ISO 100, and that is one of the reasons why we are able to recover so well. If this was shot at a higher ISO, we would not be able to recover the image very well. And I've done these tests with ISO 800, and I'll link that video here if you want to check that out. So by itself, the ISO performance of the Leica Q2 is not that great, but in this particular situation, because we have a heavy highlight and that encourages the camera to choose a lower ISO, we are also able to recover that file, recover the shadows in that file quite well. And so overall, I'm super happy with this feature. This is something that Leica had rolled out for the M11 a couple of months ago, and I remember searching to see if there were any updates globally in maybe other countries, because sometimes updates take time to roll out in India. But I checked and there weren't any updates in any of the countries that brought highlight priority mode to the Q2. But we have it now, and this is going to be a game changer, to be honest, because I've had so many highlights clipped on my pictures on the Q2 that I'm really looking forward to taking this out for a spin. Alright, that's all I have to say, and see you in another video sometime soon. Bye.